Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are KMers around the world. Together with me is Annie, my teammate, that together we're working on this series of KM and technology, trying to provide something like 5 meetings a year around different topics, various topics that interest you, me, him, and her, as to knowledge management and technology. Today, we will be speaking about tacit knowledge in the era of AI. I see that all our experts of the panel has all joined us now. I'll introduce them and speak a few minutes about the group, and then we will introduce each one. I want to remind those who know and to share with those who don't know yet that less than a month from now, on October 14th to 18th, we are celebrating the Global KM Week. I'll repeat, we're celebrating our second Global KM Week. What's a Global KM Week? It's a series of events, activities that each one and one of you can hold or can participate in within their country, organization, community, class, wherever you decide. And our aim is together to draw more awareness, more willingness to KM in organizations, in the community, in the society at all. In this special week, on October 16, together with GoTKM, the Tacit Knowledge Management Movement, we will be celebrating the Tacit Knowledge Day. So if you're planning events or any activity on that specific day, please consider focusing on tacit knowledge. There are also special conferences with a wonderful scheme and structure, but for that you will need more details. So please address me or Fisher later on, and we will add more information. So that's what to do with the Global KM Week. One short reminder to those who want or are on our research team, research community. Tomorrow we're meeting at the same hour exactly. Every second month, we listen to someone, listen to his or her work. It's called the research community, but it's not only researchers. Vincent, my dear friend, is leading this wonderful community. Okay, so now let's start. We run, as I said, every second month, bi-monthly, a roundtable of experts on different topics to do with technology and knowledge management. We decided to hire up and to see that we every time have different perspectives and ensuring it by bringing different people from different continents. So we will try now bring every time one panelist from each continent. So today we have Stuart from Australia, Pavel from Switzerland, Fisher from China, Alex from Virginia, USA, and Elmi from South Africa. So this is our panel. And what is our agenda? And my name, for those who don't know me, is Moria. I'm Moria Levy from Israel. And I'm part of the leadership helping to push KMGN and to push KM throughout the world and throughout the society. So what's our agenda for today? I'm going to ask each one of the panelists, as they get their turn, 3 questions. What is tacit knowledge? Why am I repeating this question? Because different people have different understandings of tacit knowledge. And in order to answer the 2 next questions, we have to understand what they mean when they say tacit knowledge. So the first question is, what is tacit knowledge? The second question they will be addressing is, how do they turn, or how do they think that we can turn tacit knowledge into business value? Business could be also non-profit organizations or society, but real value. And the third question is, how can such be scaled up in the era of AI? So these are 3 questions which we will address each of our panelists. Then we will come back and discuss together the question of how can we take these ideas and start implementing them tomorrow morning. And we will open the discussion to questions and comments of the wonderful community that we have here with us. So that's our agenda for today. And we will start. Stuart, you will be first. So Stuart French from Melbourne, Australia, has over 20 years of experience in knowledge management. He holds a master's degree in the field. He has worked across industries such as oil and gas, medical safety, finance, and emergency services, focusing on automation, knowledge sharing, and preserving expert insights. From working with expert systems in the early 90s to creating digital twins of lawyers in finance and capturing engineers' knowledge of critical water infrastructure, Stuart is now exploring how Gen AI can enhance the discovery, the access, and the preservation of specialized knowledge for large-scale success. Stuart, 3 questions, 10 minutes. The floor is yours. Your co-host, you may share your screen.
I'm not going to share my screen. I'm just going to talk. So
go for it.
I'm looking
at the clock.
Fantastic. So first of all, my definition of tacit knowledge. So I actually have 2 definitions for tacit knowledge. I really believe that tacit knowledge is actually an emergent phenomena from the underlying neural connections in our brain. It's our neural firings, and it's the way we respond to the various stimuli that we go through based on how those neurons are configured. It's literally just like a neural net that we see in GPTs. So the problem is that is a useless definition when it comes to talking to executives who don't really care about neuroscience or any of those things. They just care about what can happen in their business. So the other definition I've written is that tacit knowledge encompasses the deeply personal, experience-based understanding and skills developed through pattern recognition and practical engagement. So this type of knowledge is intuitive and often unconscious, expressed through actions and reactions rather than words. It thrives in environments that encourage experiential learning and collaboration, where it can be naturally shared through doing, observing, and mentoring. And those last 3 pieces are really important to me. I know knowledge management is a very broad discipline, and we've got people down the sort of records management, document management end of KM, and then you've got people like me down the other end on the experience management and managing expertise in large organizations. And so for me, often that gets overlooked, and people, because of that, tend to confuse documented knowledge with tacit knowledge. They think tacit knowledge is the know-how of somebody written down, whereas the old definition of tacit knowledge said it's the knowledge that you find it difficult to articulate, to write down. And so I'm really interested tonight in hearing everybody's thoughts about how we use AI to possibly try and capture some of that and reuse it. So that's my first question. What was the next question, Mauriel?
The next question is, how do we turn this important asset into business value?
Yeah, fantastic question. So let me tell you a quick story. When I was 15 years old, I was at a friend's house, and he had to do some homework. And so I was at a bit of a loss, and there was a book on the shelf called 101 Games from Around the World. I paged through it, and I found the game of Go, which is an Asian game. You may have heard of AlphaGo, and in 2016, AlphaGo, an AI system, managed to beat the world champion at the time, Lee Sedol. And so I've been playing that game since I was 15, and I taught my kids that. So, Mauriel, I went down the rabbit hole. I tried to find all these teaching and pedagogical research on how I could teach my kids how to play. I used mini tournaments. I bought books on the subject. I did everything I could to teach my kids, because Go teaches you strategic thinking, and I wanted my kids to have that. It was a complete failure. Only one of my kids plays with me today. But the other day, I was up at the local skating rink, and I've just recently rolled my ankle, so I couldn't skate. So I sat there with my go board and I played through a game. And I'm just going to quickly share my screen for a second and just show you this picture, because what happened was my little granddaughter came up to me and she said, "Grandpa, can I play with you?" And so I handed her the bowl of black stones and I said, "Wherever I point, you play a stone." And you can see on my phone there the game that I was playing through. I was playing through a pro game from 2016. So she was placing the stones. Now I captured a couple of stones, and she captured one of the stones. And then about 15 moves later, she played a move which captured a stone, and I didn't say a word. In fact, for most of this, I didn't say a word to her. I just kept pointing. And she placed her black stone down, looked at me, then grabbed the white stone, and with this huge grin on her face, she dropped it into her bowl as a prisoner. She'd worked it out. I hadn't explained any rules, I hadn't done anything. She had picked up just through example how that pattern worked in the game. And so in business, tacit knowledge is kind of like that. But we really want to write everything down. We really want to capture everything in rules and regulations and procedures. But tacit knowledge reveals itself at the point of a problem being solved. And often experts use their tacit knowledge not to recall a procedure or something that's done, but instead to come up with something new that fits between the rules that wasn't documented, that hasn't already been solved. And that's the beauty of tacit knowledge. So using that technique of transferring and copying and giving examples of how previous problems were solved, what you're doing is, instead of giving people a set of directions, you're building in them a map. So you don't just get from A to Z, you can go from anywhere to Z because you have the map. And that's the promise of tacit knowledge. If you can transfer it, if you can indoctrinate people in it, if you can apprentice new employees in that expert knowledge, then they can reform new solutions long after the original person has gone. Third question?
Oh, before it, I just want to summarize to see if we understood you. First of all, in order to get this value, you're telling us, look for the problem-solving opportunities, because there you really have great opportunities, or zero, may I say. Then try learning it, by copying, by showing examples. But when you do so, look at two things. You prepare a map that may have two different dimensions. One dimension, or one way to build it, is by examples. That later on, if you have a database of examples, can be used even though the processes do not exist. That is one technique that I'm hearing. Another great technique you are sharing with us, is that when we look at this problem solving, or at this tacit that was captured in other ways and other opportunities, if we can re-engineer the knowledge and turn it, or reverse engineer it and turn it to business rules, then that is the second way that would even would be easily used. Best, business rules. Second place, databases of examples that can be reused and that are prototypes for typical situations.
I'd just reverse that. I'd say that the databases and what we do and how you apply that in business is more important than the rules, because the rules tend to lead to just one thing. I equate it to a beautiful mountainous landscape in British Columbia versus a picture of that same landscape. The rules are that picture. The viewpoint is completely fixed, and no matter what the season is in the actual mountains, that picture will always look like spring. Does that make sense?
Last question. We want to speak about how do we upscale it in the era of AI. 2 minutes.
Right, great question. 2 minutes, easy. So for those who are interested in more on my point of view, I've just written a blog post on this on deltaknowledge.net, and you can have a look at my thoughts around how we capture tacit knowledge in AI. But basically, one of the problems with AI is it's messy. And when you try and get it to recall data, recall specific rules, it can hallucinate. The reason it's doing that is because it's trying to infer from a broad database. Well, that inference is actually similar to how experts work. So if you can capture your expert's experience in some form of dialogue, or in the case of DeepMind, Gemini, you can capture it in the form of pictures, of sketches, of drawings, because it's multimodal, then that facet of AI that makes it problematic when you're trying to recall accurate information is actually an advantage for generating advice. And more so, you can actually pre-program the AI to not give direct advice, which gives you a huge legal advantage. You can program the AI to detect the underlying assumptions and then ask the user questions to move them to a different viewpoint. And by doing that, and then giving the underlying references, leading back to the standards, back to the processes, you're getting the end user to use their nous and apply it in their local context, rather than giving an answer which may be factually correct, but may actually cause a big problem or a safety issue in their context. So there's a double win there for us. And if you'd like to know more about that thinking, check out deltaknowledge.net.
Wonderful. I really loved it. It connects with the AI agents we build as well. Thank you very much, Stuart. And from here, we are jumping directly to Europe. We want to now give the stage to Dr. Pavel Kraus from Switzerland. Dr. Pavel Kraus has been actively engaged in knowledge management since 1996. As knowledge networking officer, he worked for Roche Diagnostics on a global level. Since 2002, he has been consulting organizations in all aspects of knowledge management and has been teaching at universities of applied sciences in major cities in Switzerland. As president of the Swiss Knowledge Management Forum, he works with his team to promote how knowledge management creates values in organizations. Pavel, the floor is yours. You can use slides or you cannot use your slides. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Hello, everybody. Well, first question is defining tacit knowledge. Well, together with Manfred Bornemann, who is also here, and with other communities in the German-speaking Europe, we have defined the glossary of terms. And in this glossary, there is kind of our benchmark, what we think about what is knowledge and how do we distinguish it from information. For us, knowledge is bound to people. That means, in my words, knowledge is what people have in their mind at a given moment. The moment it leaves the mind, it becomes information. Unfortunately, the so-called explicit knowledge is a very misfortunate term. And for us, explicit knowledge is information. And now, when I think about now tacit knowledge or implicit knowledge, there might be a difference, but it is extremely difficult to define this. So in this way, I actually think there is no really need to make any other definition. For me, tacit knowledge is knowledge and implicit knowledge is knowledge. And that makes it a little bit easier to understand and to communicate. So that would be for the first question.
I'm so glad I asked it. We are surprised again and again.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it very complicated and you can turn it into a marketing fad. So you can say, oh, let's now elevate tacit knowledge to something special and make a little bit more marketing around it. Of course, you can do that, but it will not help everybody. Maybe it will help one single person that makes this effort. But let's leave it at that. The more interesting question is actually how to turn it into business value. So when I started my knowledge management professional career as a knowledge networking officer for Roche Diagnostics, my first task was to improve project management in R&D with knowledge management. And what we have done, we have tapped into projects, high-level projects with engineers, and we accelerated the innovation and the innovation projects. We have accelerated it with workshop designs that help to accelerate decisions, that help to accelerate solutions. And we built a business case. At the end, it was worth 50 million Swiss francs per year. So today, 50 million, it's like dollars or euro. But it is a very nice number. And this number was calculated by my boss at that time. And it was really announced in the executive suite. So that is for me how to turn it, or how to at least calculate it. But how to
Can
do
you
it?
explain? Can you explain? Not we understand that you got to a wonderful place, but how do we do it? What's the journey?
The journey is to create very specific workshop designs, which means facilitation techniques. At that time, we have worked with Martin Epler from the University of St. Gallen, and one single workshop, very well, carried out, has moved a milestone originally planned for November into May. Now, this is an acceleration of 6 months. And in many industries, people know how much value is one single day if you are earlier on the market. In the pharmaceutical industry, it used to be 2 million a day. In the diagnostic, it's usually 10 times less. So maybe it says 200,000 a day. But if you calculate this with half a year, it's still a nice business case for knowledge management.
So you facilitate workshops on the topics where you're looking for the tacit knowledge. You enable people to wisely, through the facilitation, brainstorm and come up with the tacit knowledge from these smart intersections.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we got it. Now let's go to question 3.
Well, I stay still with question 2 because it's,
Please do.
The question is how to turn it into value, and the value has to be communicated. And this is exactly the topic we have engaged in the KMGN project last year. And we have worked together with Manfred Bornemann to make it a paper at the conference, European Conference on Knowledge Management 2 weeks ago. And there we have developed a guideline how to talk with executives about knowledge management so that they would really understand it. And I welcome you to download this paper of us, because there it's a step-by-step guideline how to actually do that.
So the last step is communicating to the business management, and then it turns to be business value.
Yes, it could be the first step, because if you communicate well, you get an assignment. They employ you, they take you seriously. And I think that is really needed by knowledge managers. Yeah. And also what is also interesting, that turning tacit knowledge with the help of AI, that is now the third question. I just put into the chat a roundtable, which we are planning 1 month from now, which has exactly this topic, because we want to really see how to do that. And at the ECKM, there has been very nice examples. And one way how to do that, and there I completely agree with Stuart, before our talk started, he mentioned something, that AI helps us to turn this into a much quicker pace. And I think this is the way to go, because the real difficulty has always been the efforts to turn tacit knowledge into some documentation. And now with AI, we can do that. And we will actually see in our focus discussion in 1 month how the tools which have been presented at the ECKM can do that.
Thank you. Okay, so from Europe, we continue to the USA. Again, a big jump to Dr. Alex Bennett. Dr. Alex Bennett, professor of the Bangkok University, don't be puzzled, she's all over the place, of IKI SEA, co-founder and director of the Mountain Quest Research Institute, and the former CKO of the US Department of the Navy, believes in the multidimensionally and interconnectedness of the humanity as we move out of the infancy into full consciousness. Her work is dedicated for supporting this pivotal point in human expansion. Dear Alex, please share your screen. I also enabled Bob to be a co-host, so if you want him to share your screen or you do it by yourself, whatever's convenient for you. We don't hear you, you're muted. Dear Alex? Alex, you're muted.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and share screen here if I could.
Yes, you can. You may.
All right. Do you have it?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. I just did that and it didn't work, huh? Okay.
We'll give it another minute, and otherwise I'll share your screen. Your presentation.
Okay, maybe you should go ahead and do it. It doesn't seem to be pulling it up.
Okay, just tell me, do you want me to do the placemat or the which of the two?
First
Hold thought
slide.
introduction.
Yeah, the first slide.
The ones of whole thought.
Tacit
I'll
knowledge.
show it. This
please.
one.
Yep, that's it. Great.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, everybody has that in front of them. Tacit knowledge, I'm going to look at it a little differently, but we will do a definition first. Oh, not that. Let's go back to the presentation, if you would.
No problem. 1
You
minute,
guys
we'll
will
have
have that.
prepared.
You'll have that available to you as well. Whoop, nope.
No, not this one. Okay, we'll find another one. Okay, so it will take me a minute. Maybe I didn't keep the additional one, so I'll keep it a minute and I'll share it again. Stop sharing. Please start speaking and I'll share it in a minute.
Okay.
I think I know what you're speaking about.
Well, hopefully we'll have that quickly. And my 10 minutes is starting, so I don't want to go over. I'm going to write that down. So by definition, I go back to Polanyi's work where he introduced tacit. So tacit knowledge is that which is implied but cannot readily or openly be expressed. So Polanyi called it the pre-logical phase of knowing. And I want to point out that when tacit is made explicit, it's no longer tacit, okay? It's then explicit knowledge, which means that in fact it is information that can be shared across platforms, et cetera, and very available and open to AI. There we go. There's the first slide. So I want to just recall that all knowledge is context sensitive and situation dependent. So therefore, the reference to tacit is focused on the individual organization who is expressing it. That is the knowledge within this specific context and situation. So terms like tacit are not useful unless they bound something, unless they allow you and enable you to dig deeper down into a subject. So what is tacit to one individual or organization may not be tacit to another, may easily be explicit and readily turned into information. Just a bottom line point. Now, looking from the viewpoint of neuroscience, I just want to bring in what we've learned over the last 10, 15 years about how the mind-brain works. So 90% of the processing in the mind brain is unconscious. And approximately 70 to 80% of that 90% is, in fact, tacit knowledge. And that's going to be habits, procedural skills, intuitive judgments, expert skills, routine actions, etc. Complex problem solving. And approximately 20 to 30% of this 90% includes information and memories that are not in our immediate conscious awareness, but can be recalled. So the large amount of tacit knowledge is not available to be made explicit. This is a critical point to understand when we're talking about how to use tacit knowledge. And that goes to Stuart's early comments about having doing mentoring, shadowing, and ways to access and learn that are not bringing tacit knowledge to explicit, but tacit to tacit. So I want to talk for just a moment about whole thought. Specifically, it increases tacit knowledge, and I want to tell you why. Because whole thought is about looking at an issue and the patterns that are developed from the past. You study for tests, you get a good grade, you break the law, you're punished. And as we see those patterns, we're able to connect them with concepts. And as those concepts emerge, we move into higher mental thinking, which is conceptual in nature, which allows us to develop internal theories, which we're always doing, each and every one of us, by the way, allowing us to apply that in another situation successfully and effectively. And that's what we call praximorphic cognition. Through praxis, put in form, we're able to take it and use our thought and reapply it in another area. And that encompasses all three parts of time, where we're looking at patterns from the past, which are logic-based. And in the present, we're able to take those patterns and extrapolate them into future predictions. So we cross that temporal boundary, and we look at it from every aspect of who we are. That's the multidimensional aspect. We are physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. All of those things come into play. But all of that is grounded on what we call epistemic harmonics. And that means what we are inside as well as what we are outside. The explicit that we see, the activity that we're engaging in, all those wonderful things that are experiential in nature, but also what's going on inside, which is 90% of the processing happening in the unconscious. And remember, 70 to 80% of that, which is tacit and cannot be brought into explicit. Okay, next slide. Oh, by the way,
yes, but you have 4 more minutes and you have 2 additional questions. So tell me where to jump to.
Go ahead to the next slide really fast, please. I just want to bring up that capacity is so much more important than capability, because capability is bound. Capacity means that we're able to have the flexibility, adaptability, and resilience for the future. Okay, so knowledge capacity is what we call ignite whole thought. Next slide, please, to answer the questions at hand. Turning tacit into business value is multifaceted. And to date, it has been largely focused on making things explicit. And yet now we understand that the large amount of tacit information cannot be made explicit. It remains within. I have examples of all of this with the slides that are available to everybody. So I'm not going to go into the examples. When we move into AI, AI has the ability to scale the conversion of tacit knowledge into business value. I mean, ask any ChatGPT system. They'll give you the answer to that. But through neuro-linguistic programming, scalable training, learning platforms, machine learning, predictive analytics, I have, again, all of this detailed in the notes pages. And we can look it up. We can explore with ChatGPT, all the things that have already been mentioned. All of these are available and certainly are going to help enable us. Could we go to the next slide, please? Which is my most important slide. I would like to turn this upside down. I would like to say that enabled and augmented by AI, the challenge is for the human mind brain to be able to successfully use all that we are being provided through these new systems. And so the challenge is for us to use these special capabilities that are not available in AI, that are not there, that are human in nature, utilizing all of these technological advancements to enable learning and human expansion and bringing a greater value into business through fostering open communication, conversations, collaboration, of course, all of these things that are special for us, honing judgment, emotional intelligence, social skills. These are things AI does not have, but we can use AI to help facilitate these in a larger way and expand human capacity and ability to bring value into business. And through whole thought, we talked a little bit about it before, pattern recognition, synthesis, insight generation. We can raise our human intelligence, building knowledge capacity, expand that capacity, trigger tacit knowledge. Knowledge capacity requires tacit knowledge, period, point blank. It's using what we have within to bring value into business. That's what they're all about. And of course, that requires cultivating infinite learning, both existentially and experientially. All of that supported by AI, personalized learning paths, curated resources, contextual learning. And that also talks about balancing who we are within and without and considering the ethical implications. So what I'm suggesting is that bringing AI into our organizations to help increase business value, the business proposition, requires the human to expand their mental capability to use it fully in a larger way to bring greater value. So I'd like to reverse our focus and say, this is the responsibility of each and every individual to learn and grow how to better use these amazing capabilities that are now available to humanity. And I did it within 10 minutes.
And that's why I won't repeat you, but I love it when I learn every day again from each one and one of you, all of you. Thank you. Okay, we are jumping now to Africa, to Elmi Bessler. Elmi, I'll just stop sharing. Elmi is a keen explorer of knowledge and knowing in our uncertain and ambiguous world and organizational life. She's currently working with a client on how to keep our knowledge strong, starting with an aging workforce and now in reframing to an intergenerational workforce. Her interest in knowledge ecosystems, narrative knowledge, sense-making, complexity, and those unknown unknowns in an uncertain and ambiguous world. She's also collaborating in a research project with the university on circulating and teaching to prepare graduates in knowledge management and information science for the future of work and the future workspace. Thank you, Elmi, for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really privileged to be here, and I hope to be more active and more present in these conversations also going forward. So yeah, I thought, let me ask then ChatGPT and bring in a bit of playfulness and say, what will be a witty way to say what is AI and tacit knowledge? And then ChatGPT came up. It started, and I say, no, it's not quite yet. Is this the best you got? And then we got to, tacit knowledge is the stuff humans just know. AI is still over there Googling how to be human. And then later it says blessed circuits. But AI is watching a robot try to crack a joke, but that was just me playing a bit on that. So what is it that what makes us human? So I'm going to speak a bit from some of the reading, and I am going backwards in my reading. So if I think about tacit knowledge, to me it's that practical wisdom and judgment that we gain, as others have said, through our experience, through our being, and through our living in our world, in our environments, in our societies, in our work, in our organizations. So Tukos refers to that as the phronetic gap, and that is where we have the initial confusion and puzzlement, and more that is in uncertainty and ambiguity. So how do we develop, nurture, and develop that practical wisdom so that we can deal more effectively and elegantly and ethically with those phronetic gaps? Phronesis also from Aristotle, it's also a virtue that guides moral behavior. So that is where the ethics become embedded in our tacitness as well. So Tukos then says that what gives organizational knowledge dynamism is that there's a dialectic between the particular and the general. So we said that knowledge is context sensitive or context specific, it's situated, it is in our flow of activities, in our flow of our lived experiences, in our flow of being as well. And I think that is where the spiritual and the consciousness and all of that also comes in. And I'm so glad that I've heard that as well, because I think that we tend to have a very narrow or a more narrow perspective on tacit knowledge. So what I was then thinking here, if we get into a conversational exchange with generative AI, is that a form where the general and the particular start to become in a dialectic exchange? Because I see that AI is not only a capability or a tool, but it might even bring a new form of knowledge, I'm not yet sure about that, into our knowledge ecosystem, which is distributed amongst many actors. So in terms of algorithms, we can start to see, is that another social actor in our distributed knowledge ecosystems? More than a repository with a clever synthesis on top of that. And then I was also asking, because the part of Polanyi that always intrigued me is that tacit and explicit knowledge is mutually constituted and it cannot be disentangled. So as we start to also exchange and interact with AI in our knowing, in our quest for phronetic wisdom, because I think it's a given that it is out there. So it's to say, where does it fit and how are we going to appropriate it, and when and how should we use it or not use it? But is this an example of the tacit, or is that what's happening here, that our tacit and explicit knowledge is mutually constituted in that exchange? Then there's also something else there that we need to be mindful of, is because of the algorithms, because of our data sets, we can also tend to get much more of the sameness. Gaping Void in one of their cartoons say, nobody likes a stagnant pool of sameness. And there is an interesting article in Nature that has also been published, and they have, our AI was used to give prompts and ideas to write a short story. And in that, what they have found is that AI can increase individual creativity, but we lose collective novelty and collective, that richness. collectively. And that is where we might get to the sameness. And also in our organizations, I think that we need to be mindful of that. Is it that we are just getting more industry recipes? You know, is it a combination of everybody's or more people's recipes, more of them? Or what do we get in and what can we get? Now, one way is to start to also look at our narrative knowledge, and there we have heuristics. That is a particular form of knowledge that is emerging from our lived experiences, from our doing, from our flow of activities. And so that is one way, if we can start to capture those heuristic knowledge as well, as our lived experiences and as we are living. And that we can also do, some of you might be familiar with the Ashen model, which links us to the heuristics. It is artifact skills, but also then our heuristics, our experiences, and our natural talent. So in terms of the work that we are currently doing with this public service organization, we are looking at how do we capture or how do we gather that heuristic knowledge, keep it alive, but also then in terms of storybooks and in terms of how does that feed further into the organization? So can that become part of the training data sets? Does it make sense to include it in there? And we do capture it in narrative form. So that is one thing that we are also working with. Then another thing about tacit knowledge, and I tend to use tacit knowledge, tacit knowing as interchangeable. But Gary Klein has this concept of speculative thinking. And that is where we have frontier thinking and where we don't yet, we only have fragments. And how do we stretch our thinking and our imagination actually in terms of that and our acts of imagination in our world. And I think what Alex has said, that these capabilities, we really need to be very more. I think what AI is doing now for us is to make us aware of those again and to bring it to the fore, because we need to ask the question, is AI going to dehumanize us? Are we going to allow that? Or how do we rehumanize knowledge as well and our knowledge capabilities? But it will also be in that interaction and in that exchange. Yeah, and then the other thing that also intrigues me is the whole concept of conceptual blending. In our world, how we make sense and how we understand and how we comprehend and how we make knowledge and meaning is that we blend material from multiple sources, often in real time. And then we also need to ask the question, if we have these capabilities and these knowledge capabilities and these interactions, does it give us novel solutions, or as I've heard, does it give us insights into the patterns that has brought us here? What can it give us? And where do we work with that then? So there is the whole concept also where our algorithms can bring us much of the sameness, almost ossify our meaning. If we have human sensor networks, and that is the work that we are doing also with the Genevan Code, where we capture the experiences of the narrative, but it's not only, like I say, the content, it's also the interpretation that is human-driven. So I, as the person who is sharing my heuristic knowledge, my lived experience, my lesson learned, get also the opportunity to interpret that. And it's not only outsourced or delegated or given to an algorithm then to do. So that's self-interpretation, self-analysis, and then we can do that at scale as well. And in that way, we can tap into the diversity, the cognitive diversity, the perceptual diversity, the diversity of belief, the diversity of experiences in our organizations or in our systems. Then I was also asking if there's an element of social, because one aspect of tacit knowledge as well is that it is social. Then And part of social is also perspective taking from my social context, from my environment, from others, and in exchange of, and in those exchanges with others. So with this, that we can also, these human sensor networks can scale our perspective taking, because it can be across a larger population, a larger group. It can be very diverse as well, that we can tap into. And we can have various uses for that, or use cases. It can also give us feedback on judgments in the organizations, like strategy, like policy, like knowledge claims, that is in the organization or get made. And how can we tap into this distributed intelligence, or the distributed knowledge, or the distributed world out there with the knowing, and get also feedback and see how does our knowledge claim and our understanding and our judgment being assessed or interpreted in our distributed knowledge systems. Yeah, and we can also wait and see and monitor. So that is also about the distributed intelligence that we want to tap into.
And Elmi, if you can summarize, because we are over time,
Okay.
please.
Oh, right. Okay, no, that's fine. I'm at my end. Good.
Okay, so I took a lot of things, but the greatest thing is the prism of the dialect between the general and the specific, and how through this prism we also understand tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge, also understand the value, and also understand where AI can help us, at least part of it. Thank you very much. Last but not least, we are jumping back to Asia, to Fisher Yu. He's the Mentoring Co. China country president, focusing on integrating TKM, tacit knowledge management, into corporate mentoring. He's one of the key founders, if not the founder, of GoTKM, an NPO, nonprofit organization in Brussels to promote tacit knowledge management worldwide. He's an EMCC accredited mentor, the only winner of the year 2021 and 2022 EMCC Global Mentoring Awards. Thank you, Fisher, for joining us, and I'm sure that you're going to bring a different perspective. So we are waiting to hear you. You have your 10 minutes, please, now.
Thank you, Maria. Glad to meet every one of you. It seems being the last person to speak is so difficult. I realize, because all the other experts already spoke the good things. So let me simply share with everyone the things we did here for mentoring. We are purely doing the tacit knowledge management into corporate mentoring, and we understand that the tacit knowledge refer to their knowledge, skill set, know-how, personal experience, intuition, and insight, and ability, and so on, which an individual gained through experience that is difficult to express or transfer to another person through words or writing. That's something we adopt. And then that's the question one. While the question two, how do you turn tacit knowledge into business values? We do that through corporate mentoring. Because if you take out this tacit knowledge, we know many people did a lot of work in that areas, but they don't know how to transmit that properly, which if they do not transmit, then it's hard for them to get the business values. So that's something we do it here. We integrate this thing together, TKM, into corporate mentoring. We focus on mentoring, on corporate mentoring side. Of course, for tacit knowledge management, for tacit knowledges, we think that there are 4 levels of tacit knowledges. One is individual levels. The other is the peer levels. The third is a team, may not be the peer, but the team. The fourth are the communities or the organizations. Sometimes the community may be bigger than organization or smaller than organizations. exists within this 4 level of tacit knowledge. So if we want to capture the tacit knowledge, we need to look at the 4 aspects where tacit knowledge lies. Maybe I can share with one of the 2 pictures or 2 screens, which let me do that way. 2 screens. Yeah, can everyone see my screen?
A minute. We're on our way to see it. We hope. Yeah, we see it now.
Yeah, you see it? Yeah. So this is the way we do the tacit knowledge management into corporate mentoring. Basically, we think if we do not put that into the corporate side, into the business, then it's useless. Maybe many people do the codify the tacit knowledge or experience, but put in the computers, storage rooms, and so on, which make no sense to some extent. So for us, we would like to use that in the business and create values for the business. I give you one example. We found this top sales in a company. Usually, we regard this typically this top sales as the gorilla, this most powerful and gorilla. So in that, we identify this gorilla, and then we will try to extract their tacit knowledges and codify that, and then ensure we just codify the key tacit knowledge related to the performance of this job. And then let's say the top sales. And then the first thing we need to identify and select the right gorilla. Then we will codify that. And then afterwards, we will train the gorilla to be a mentor. Because if the gorilla do not act as a mentor, if some other companies, let's say, they codify the documents, they codify all the tacit knowledge, make it explicit, and then get the HR people or the other trainer to training to do this knowledge transfers. Sometimes it's so difficult because there are some things which cannot be codified. So even the trainer who are not the high performers, they do not understand the core part of this skill set. So the third step would be train the top performer into a mentor. And the fourth thing, we need to recruit the right mentee, like the young gorilla. You can't get a horse or pig, okay, train them to be a gorilla, top self gorilla. It's no way. So that's why we need to ensure your knowledge being transmitted properly to the right candidates. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And of course, the transfer.
Can you explain it? Because you're saying mentor and create. What's the creation?
Yeah, mentoring creation here we say is not just the teaching them or replicate to another gorilla. Sometimes it's difficult, but we want the young gorilla can be something better or above or exceed the capability of the top performer. So that's something new, because without mentoring, you just teach. The other people just imitate and follow without any innovations, creativities inside. So within this thing included, and you can get this good performer, powerful gorilla in the end. So we use this way to replicate the corporate skill set or high performer as many as possible. So that's the way we integrate the tacit knowledge into corporate mentoring. And I can give you one example, the real cases we did it here.
Can you just Okay, I think we need one more moment on that
Yeah.
slide. Yes, who
Yeah.
creates the big gorilla or the new gorilla, or together?
Yeah, the whole mentoring program create the new gorilla.
Okay, so it's not that they are creating together something, but we are creating through the mentoring. We are creating a new gorilla.
Yes, the
Thank
new
you.
high performer gorilla, because the young gorilla, you need to find to recruit or identify within the current team or recruit from outside if you don't have it. Because in
Understood.
many companies, let's say you have one top sales, and then you want to replicate that sales skill to the whole team, but in many cases it doesn't work. So from our experience, we realize that some will say the top performer is the gorilla, is a powerful gorilla, while the young salespeople, they are not gorilla, they are the pigs, horse, or dogs, whatever. They are not gorilla at all.
Understood. Last question, if you can help us, we have 2-3 more minutes, so if you can jump to the last question of how does AI upscale it?
Yeah, in the past, so everything had to be done manually, while now we define the tacit knowledge into two parts. One part is easily to be codified. The other is difficult to be codified. And then, so easily to be codified, we use the series of questionnaires. We design the right questionnaire, use the AI or to use different kind of material to install into the system, let the system do the analyze and calculation for us. It will save us a lot of time. So in that case, we will reduce our labor cost or timing, and then increase the efficiency of doing these tacit knowledge extractions, also the replications.
Okay.
So that's the way. That's how we think AI definitely can help us to scale up all this one. Otherwise, it will be so difficult because you have to spend a lot of time doing this tacit knowledge extractions. But now we only spend our time in the most difficult part, while the easy part to be done by the machine.
So the number 2, the extract and codification, is done by machine.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something. Yeah, I would like to share. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, please share. You want?
You
want to add?
One more page. Just one example. The real cases. I would like to share because this is so critical. I want everyone to see these ones. Just a second. Yeah. These examples. We've done this for a credit card overdue collecting company. They have around $15 billion a year overdues. And we help them to say, have the three, we find the top performer and also find the average performer. So before the program started, their daily average collection is $3,500 a day. But after 12 months, their daily average collection increased to $7,900 a day. So it more or less double the whole performance. So that's why we integrate all this the value calculation into with KPI and KBI. KPI means key behavior indicators. So sometimes the tacit knowledge, they may not get the performance improved, but get the behavior improved also. So this is the case I would like to share with everyone. Thank you.
Wonderful case. We wish all our customers and our consultants and our KM of such success in their organizations. I'm now opening it back. Please stop. Wonderful. To an open question to all the panelists. We heard wonderful ideas. I learned a lot today. And I think that I'm already an expert in tacit knowledge, and yet I learned a lot. But what do we do tomorrow morning? How do we take all these great ideas and start working better, leveraging the tacit knowledge value, leveraging the AI in order to upscale it even more? What should we do next? Please.
Well, I can go first if you like, Maria.
Yes, please, please.
For me, it's important that as organizations, we take advantage of both explicit and tacit. Let me tell you a quick story about a job we did about 5 years ago with a bunch of lawyers. So we had a situation in an organization where we were monitoring incoming business partners, and we had a team of lawyers looking for evidence of fraud. So myself and my knowledge management team sat down with their team, and we tried to work out how they were doing that. Now, there was a 73-step process with all these documents and everything that they had to give in so that we understood all about them and we could set up their accounts and everything else. But it was also in order under the money laundering laws to understand if they were doing the wrong thing. When we asked the team, how did they know someone was fraudulent? Quite often the answer was, I just feel it in my gut. I don't know whether that's a saying that translates internationally, but in Australia, feel it in your gut is a sort of an emotion that something's wrong. And so we analyzed that. We took 4 months. We actually worked with the legal team. And when these situations come up, we looked at the data, we found the ones that were actually fraudulent that we'd proven. And then we worked backwards and we said, right, what were the gut feelings that you had along the way that tipped you off that this might be the case? And just as one example that we found, when we ask for their passport to be sent through, the ones that were fraudulent would take up to 2 or 3 days to scan and send in their passport. There's something in the law that once you identify yourself that way, the penalties are higher, and they know that. And so we implemented an EasyDoc system that allowed a mobile phone to take pictures of these documents and upload them straight away. Plus, it gave us a change log, so we knew exactly what time and date the document was requested and exactly when they gave it back. And anyone who took longer than 8 hours between those two things, we flagged with a yellow flag. Now, we found 18 of these tacit gut feels during those 4 months, and we programmed them all into a system. So now all these orange flags would come up, and once they had 3 orange flags, they turned red. A second lawyer was assigned to the case, and they dug deeper. They took more care with those ones. So that's an example of tacit knowledge that you can capture and turn into rules. But there's also then the mentoring within that team, which we kept tacit to tacit. So it wasn't one way or the other. We got new lawyers coming onto the team, taught by the older lawyers. As they showed how the system worked, they would tell stories about previous fraud cases and how that worked. And so they had this rich mix of data and story that they could build up. We took the time to competency for a new lawyer from 10 weeks to 8 days. And Fisher mentioned key behavioral indicators. I love that. That's great, Fisher. I use time to competency as a key metric for me. And that metric is how long before a customer can't tell the difference between a newcomer and an old timer. So that's my my feedback.
Anyone else from the yes, please, Bob.
I have a question for Fisher. I think you're looking at the different levels of Tacit Knowledge is brilliant.
Thank you.
At FEI, at the Federal, or excuse me, at Mountain Quest Institute, we've been looking at how to make the AI smarter through thoughtware using whole thought and capacity, knowledge capacities to teach the AI to be smarter, to, in the analysis process, to create a dialogue conversation with the user or users to look at how to manage the tacit knowledge. Have you looked at any of that kind of interactive capability?
Yeah, that's something we're now in the process of doing that with one of our clients. So actually, we start to do this somehow April or May this year. We start to do this year. We're now trying to build up the large database. Without database, the AI wouldn't work very well. So you need the large database. But also, it also creates a lot of problem called the ethical problems, because you have the tacit knowledge from this client, and while the whole industry is you build into your client will be very scary about you capture so much of their tacit knowledge into your system, and that may leak their confidential information of their business. They are very scary about that. So that's why last time I was thinking of trying to get a group of people who are specializing in design the code of ethics for this industry. Because so far, to be frank, we don't have any code of ethics criteria need to be followed in this industry at all. So, in many cases, when we are doing the tacit knowledge with our client, if we will try to dig out more and more tacit knowledge from a top performer, means we will be the only person in the world that person better than anybody else. That creates a lot of ethical problems behind. So we are trying to see how can we address this problem afterwards with more and more experts to step into and get this issue resolved.
Thank you. You're going in the right direction.
Thank you.
Annie wanted to ask a question. We're moving to questions, and if we have time at the end, we'll go back to the ending sentence and what to do tomorrow morning. So Annie, please speak out.
Actually, I want to kind of say a question, but I also want to give an example too that kind of brings together what Stuart, Alex, and Pavel had kind of said, especially the point of it being that context sensitive and situational specific. Working in, and this I'll do this very quickly, but working like in a public utility company where there was an elder person who was about to retire after 50 years, who knew the machines and the burn units as they would operate and could actually hear a noise and know what needed to change, so they could, what they would do is they would actually step forward and that would get fixed. And this kind of ties back to like what Alex was saying, was it is within them, innate, and you cannot ask the question of how do you do this, because they will answer, I just hear a noise, and noise is relative to anyone who wants to think of what that noise is and how to decide it. Okay.
Right.
So I'm called in to ask this person that and to understand it. And mine is, I can't do this because this is part of them and part of their mind. So I cannot get this information from them. We probably should have done mentoring or some type of apprenticeship prior to. Okay. So then the question is, well, how do we get this? Because they're going to retire. And when these units go down, they cost us in essence of millions of dollars a day, and we cannot afford that. And this person has saved us this in the long run, which is another point. Organizations need to recognize who are their value points within an organization, especially with people, because they don't own the people, and the people own the intellectual capital within them. So therefore, like anything, if they leave, it's very volatile. So that person is an asset to an organization and not a liability. Okay. So then we flip and the question becomes, how do we get this? Well, at that point, I was actually finishing a master's in systems engineering and artificial intelligence. And I said, well, what we need to do is see what is the state of the equipment when they actually provide it, and then what is the state of it when it's optimized or running efficiently. And let's look at those gaps. We can develop the intelligence to tell us that. And that way with AI, we can then move forward with actionable data and have knowledge to know what is going on with these machines. So that's just something to show you how all three of those thoughts that they were putting out there kind of came back to that case study that I was looking at. But my main point here is, I think that in order for us to move forward, we have to have structure, or I'm going to go back to even digital twins. We need to know the structures that we're working within so that we can know the points of where we need knowledge, how to use that knowledge, and where we can improve on that knowledge. So I think without that a lot of times we will be doing things that appear to add business value, but they're not necessarily adding business value in the total cost of what we're doing. I hope that makes sense.
Dear Alex, yes, please.
I'm going to attempt to share my screen again and just see if this works. Hopefully it will.
You have to double click on the screen you want to share. Not one click, but double click.
Okay. It's the next slide in that presentation if you want to pull it up.
No problem at all. I'm on my way.
It says next steps.
Here we are, next steps. I'll share my screen for you. Here we go.
Thank you. Okay. So what I wanted to talk about for just a second, if you can get that bottom line in there as well, that's a really important line. Everybody make sure to see that. Knowledge capacities actually trigger your tacit knowledge, but it's not any good unless you've built the bevy of your tacit knowledge. So next steps, first of all, ignite whole thought through expanding your knowledge capacity. So you have access to more of that which is tacit in there for the future. Second, embrace infinite learning. In the model below, that's the embedding tacit knowledge. We have to remember that it is the reservoir for what we're doing today. And so it's not enough just to pull it up and share it. It has to continually be being renewed. Third, purposefully engage tacit knowledge. We can put ourselves in experiential situations to trigger the knowledge that we have within, to bring up that understanding, whether it stays in intuitive form or we're able to make that small amount explicit. Another thing that we did in the Department of Navy is we moved into a verification process. And this is the process of consulting a trusted other. This, in fact, handles the issues Stuart was talking about. AI is messy. It is does have hallucinations. So we need to continue to keep the individual, the human, in the process and verify with our own trusted others that have built that expertise that's needed. Also, managing your relationship network, incredibly important to be having the conversations, the mentoring, the shadowing with people, not only that you respect and trust, but also who have the expertise that you have a passion around and want to move into. So knowledge capacities trigger your tacit knowledge, which is through infinite learning, a continuous gift for the future. Could I have the next slide? Number 6 is what Bob talked to. And if you'd go to the next slide, this is my closing thought that I wanted to share with you. We are, in fact, complex adaptive systems. We're either declining or we're expanding. The choice is ours. So living is learning, learning is living. So in this unprecedented age of change, we are enabled and augmented by incredible technological advances. And that challenges each of us to embrace the capacity we have within and honor all that is human, to stay out there on the front edge, expanding our capacity, cultivating our learning, providing a path into a rich and enlightened cognitive future. And this demands each of us to contribute, each of us. And I just want to get that point across. And thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for sharing your deep thoughts and deep understanding. We learn every time again. Pavel, do you want to add, please?
Yes, I think AI is still kind of in the beginning, but I have a vision, and this vision has been triggered by a knowledge cafe at an engineering company here in Switzerland, which I facilitated. We had 12 tables. Each table had a different topic, and there have been discussions around these tables. Everything has been recorded, and the idea is to feed all of the audio recordings into AI and then be able to ask questions around the topics that have been discussed from people that have been either not in the room at all or which have been at a different table. And this is for me kind of the future, that we can actually tap into knowledge that is distributed on different locations, talking about this may be the same, but maybe different topics. But the main thing for me will always be that at the same time we ask a question, we have also a name of a person that has been discussing and contributing to that topic, because this is something that is done. We talked about yellow pages a little bit at the beginning, but the most efficient way is always to talk to somebody. It's much more efficient than to go through information and then document it and read it at a later point of time. And this is something that actually Johnny Müller is doing very well at Siemens. I think Johnny is still here. He does it with connecting people according to same topics, same problem, same issues, and same solutions. And he makes people talk to each other. And I think that's a big leverage. And the prerequisite of that, of course, is if we can somehow make this effort to connect people with AI easier. But we will not be able to avoid people talking to each other.
I want to relate to what you said and Alex said, and take the relationship, the human AI, the human machine is probably the winning card, the winning key. So instead of being intimidated, instead of trying doing it all, we have to do all the time, find how to do it wisely, and combining these two, each with its advantages. Thank you, Pavel. I know you said additional things, but I just want to connect these 2 points together. Helmi.
For me, the knowledge management, as I put here, is the art to find the right balance between content and conversation.
Yes, or some say collect and connect, when you connect to people or when you collect the information from a knowledge base or database. Thank you. Helmi, please.
Yeah, there's 2 comments. If I look at where we are with AI now, it's actually the tacit knowledge that we are building, but that we also need to enact in terms of understanding and appropriating AI. We should be very mindful of that as well, that we are going through that process right now. Yeah, I want to link on to Alex also say learning is living, and living is learning. And I think for me, there's also the aspect, as much as we look at the reservoirs and as much we look at the tacit knowledge and how we can augment that access to tacit knowledge or give people in terms of mentoring. For me, there's a whole new relationing that we are busy to explore and find as well. With this, if we call it technology, but it's actually a bit more than technology than what we previously had. And what is also then intriguing in there is our identity work. How do we relate in AI and our tacit knowledge, and the identity work around that is also something that we need to keep in mind. We've heard that it's a mentor. We've heard that it's a conversation and a dialogue. So there's already many notions in our world about our relationing and our identity. And it will be interesting also how that affects and also enact people to bring in their tacit knowledge as we work in that. Is it a combination? Is it a symbiosis? That's also some of the things in terms of our distributed knowledge networks that we need to explore further.
The friction, maybe. It looks like it quarrels, but yet the friction is probably something very important here. If I go back to Arthur's work. Fisher.
Yeah.
Please.
I'm thinking of AI for TKM will be two ways. One is just a tool. This tool can help us to go faster, like we have this high-speed train in China, but you cannot have door-to-door high-speed train. You still have to go to the train station and exit that another train station, and then so both sides you have to work manually. So that my I use this kind of metaphor. On the other side, I think AI, since it's so powerful, it will give us will help us to generate something new, which a human being cannot get it. So that's another dimension of how AI can help us with this tacit knowledge, because that's something already happened in our practice here in China. Of course, we try with a small amount of this database, but it had already give us that kind of impact to see, because the system already can generate something new, which help us to get this help us to identify some things which we may never, realize that at all.
Wonderful. So A, I love the metaphor and I'll be using it. But B, I think you're taking us to a new level here, because what we're saying is it's not only going to make our work more efficient or maybe improve it, but it's going to make it to enable us to get to arrive, to reach to new understandings, new tacit knowledge that relates to what Alex told us in other ways.
Yeah.
Because, and I want to take it back to the building blocks of the generative AI. When we had Google, we could collect. When we added generative AI, we could even translate, what gave us even more resources and more inputs. But the wonderful ability of generative AI to integrate these above the collection and the translation, to integrate them, to synthesize them, and then to summarize them to something that we can swallow, that is concise enough that we can understand and swallow. It's maybe only knowledge representation, but it gives us new understandings, and it inspires also our thoughts for even more directions. So I think that with this sentence of yes, we have a bright future, and the future is even brighter than the past with AI. And if we put on it tacit knowledge and our human beings' capabilities and advantages, we have no limits. The sky is our limit, and we have a so important mission to bring more prosperity, more success to this world through AI, knowledge, tacit knowledge, and learning. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a great morning, evening, and night, KMers, wherever you are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I really learned a lot. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.